Okay, so here we are at the end of week 2. We're on day 6. Love is not irritable. And the scripture for day 6 is Proverbs 16:32. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who captures a city. And again, that's not necessarily the scripture that screams out to me. Um, it's appropriate, but that, I guess where I tend to, my mind wanders, and I'm all about Philippians 4:6-7. But let's talk about this. Love is not irritable. Well, I mean, that's kind of like a duh, but how often do we find ourselves being fussy? And I thought it was interesting in the commentary. It said that to be irritable means to be near the point of a knife. Well, boy, prickly. And that's I get fussy, and usually it's the things that they talk about in here that I'm still just as human as the next person, and I still need God's grace every single day. But that doesn't mean that I don't need to make changes and I don't need to grow. So thankfully, God is persistent in his passion for us and to help us grow closer to him. But let's think about this of the things that cause irritability. To not be overly sensitive, and exercise emotional self-control. And I know, there have been times that I say, well, I just wear my heart on my sleeves, which is true, but that doesn't mean that I can't have that self-control. And in one of the first videos, I talked about this coworker who, she exercised self-control and was such a role model to me in that particular aspect of not letting my emotions dictate my behavior. But so, I guess how does that work for you, and what things trigger irritability in your day-to-day life? Well, one of the things that they talk about is stress, and boy, isn't that the truth. And it comes in all different shapes and sizes. Are you overworking, overspending? Are you not getting enough rest? Or nutrition or exercise, or all the different things that it's not just an excess, but also a deficiency. And that is just such a fine balance. And the authors wrote that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And how many times have we heard that? And it's true. And that we have to balance and prioritize and pace ourselves. And that's something that I really still struggle with, of pacing myself to a new norm, and because my life isn't the same as it was a few years ago, and I have to remind myself before I wear myself out that I don't have the same type of physical stamina that I had years ago. And if I don't pace myself, then I end up in bed for a few days. And and sometimes I will take a calculated risk, so to speak, and say, well, okay, is it worth it? And generally speaking, I would say that it isn't. But after the fact is when I think about it. When I have those down days and I'm thinking, gosh, I should have slowed down, and it wasn't really, so important to get all those things done. And so it becomes a priority thing. And, in today's lifestyles, I think that we just have so many demands that we allow to be placed on us. And it's hard saying no. And it's hard readjusting schedules. And, someone very near and dear to me is going through having to make some big changes in her life, and it's hard. She's an active mom, she's a businesswoman, she's a wife, she has all these tags on her time, and to have to put herself in the position to say, okay, I can't do it all, and if I try to do it all, I'm not helping anyone, I'm only hurting everyone. And it's hard for us to not think of ourselves as super women, and that we're still just as human as the next, and we have to take a step back. And that's the thing that the authors really focused on through day 6. And it's not so much about, well, don't be irritable, but what leads to irritability. And to, think about, okay, and God even tells us, to take a Sabbath, to vacation day, every week, not just when we can fit it in, of really devoting a day to rest, and not just physical rest, but to rest in Him. And so I think that is something that we sort of look at from time to time as a luxury and not a necessity. And truth be told, it is a necessity. We need it, because without it, we're going to suffer. And in turn, those around us will suffer as well. But it was also, that's where the scripture of Philippians 4, 6, and 7 that they, talked about, one way to confront anxiety is to pray through it. And, it's so simple, but, how often is that my first reaction? How often am I trying to fix something first, and then, well, if that doesn't work or this doesn't work, okay, well, if I run out of options, then I'll pray about it. And if I prayed about it to begin with, chances are I would have taken a completely different route. But again, it's still just so beautiful that God provides us with, these solutions and guidelines of how to confront, the stresses in our life, and that it's just as or more important today than it was when it was originally written. So to think about the things that will, lead to those stressors, or to get you to that place of being reactive instead of active in your response to the situations of life going around. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me was pride, that leads you to act harshly in order to protect your ego or reputation. And that was something I really struggled with. And I still do, because if I'm not wanting to pace myself, at the root of it, it's a pride issue of, well, I don't want to look weak to other people. I want to, still, be the person that can do this and this and this and this. And, which is, is just silly, but that's why it's a pride issue. It's something God's still working on me daily. So to think about these things and what are your stress triggers of, is it overcommitment? And, and that's why when we first started this study, when I was doing the intro, that I said, you've got to really prioritize your time, because this is I think it's a huge commitment, and I don't talk about it being 12 weeks because that's a long time. And I because if you think about it in that aspect, you think, oh, well, there's no way I can do this. And the great thing is that no one's asking you to do this in 12 weeks. That's just the way I spread it out. And if you start and stop and start again, that's fine. It's about just to keep going and to not give up on yourself and growing your relationship with God. And not to say that if you stop that you're giving up on your relationship. That didn't come out right, because I don't mean that. But don't give up on yourself is what I'm saying. And to, allow God to speak to you and guide you to a deeper relationship. That's what was the important part. So in the dare for this particular day, it says to make a list of areas where you need to add margin to your schedule. And I never really thought of it that way. But being in the accounting world, well, to add margin means you have to, the books have to balance. And you still only have 24 hours in a day. And you still only have 7 days a week. And that time doesn't change. But how you use your time can change. And, you may be in a season where, there isn't, you can't see that possibility to add margin. And and that may be true, or maybe you just have too many expectations of yourself. And I only say that because that's this gal right here. I was world's worst at it. I was trying to do anything and everything because I thought that's just what I needed to do. And at the end of the day, there's a price tag attached to it, because it will take its toll. Stress takes a toll on you. And so the way to reduce stress, that they talk about in this particular commentary, but also as we move into our Think Right, Pray for day 6, to really think about some areas in your life where you have a tendency to, like, this is going to send me over the edge every single time. Well, okay, so is there a way to approach it differently? And so, think about that, and then write out some of the areas where it all seems like too much. And then, and if you could take just one thing off your plate, what would that look like? And maybe it's not forever. Maybe it's just for a day or one day each week, or, maybe it's a permanent thing to take off your plate. That's for you and God to work through. But, as you work through this particular day, think about those things really that just push you to the edge, and what can you do to change that? And then, this was good. I didn't even realize I wrote that. What can you lay at the cross and leave it there? And I say that because, how often we will go and we'll lay something at the cross and, Lord, I'm going to give this to you to take care of. And then, well, just in case you can't handle it, God, let me just take that back with me, and I'll get back to you on it. Yeah, so think about those things. What is something that you can really lay down at the cross and leave it there? And that might be something you have to remind yourself every single day. Lord, I'm giving this to you today. And, even though you kind of slide it back another day, Lord, no, I'm giving this to you. And, But so it takes practice. It's not, rarely is it a one and done for me. I have to practice a lot. But so as you go through that, it'll be interesting to see what God reveals to you of things that you really can lay down for Him and leave them there for Him. And so when you pray, ask God for the confidence and trust to believe He will fight for you and to trust that He will come through to provide the relief you need. And that is a big trust thing, but it's powerful when we exercise it. So here we are at the end of week 2, and I hope you're enjoying the book and the videos and the commentary, and we will see what the next week brings. Blessings to you all.